it better? Better? Maybe even better now. Good. This is the room today. Okay. So find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and just recognize this moment. You don't have to try to accomplish anything, create something. You just look. Just notice what is here. And even if your mind is filled with thinking, you just allow thinking to happen. Just notice how everything settles. How the experience of the body gets more pronounced. And you see the natural movement of everything. On the surface level, what comes through the senses, thoughts, emotional content. If the mind becomes a bit quiet, it's easy to recognize the movement of energy in the body, the direction of the prana and the apana. Like a subtle tingling. You are no longer the driver of this body. You're just the capacity of recognizing. Watchfulness itself, awareness itself, experiencing body. this recognition, of this unmoving awareness, there is a deep acceptance of the movement in the experience, the coming and going of thoughts, bodily sensations, and what comes through the senses. It's easy for the mind to start looking for something new, to have the feeling that you have missed something and that something has to be created. But meditation is not that. It is the recognition of what is. It's a deep acceptance of this moment as it is. You might feel challenged by so little happening in this moment. But that is just because the ego is used to be entertained. And in this moment, no distractions, only this. And if you take your time to be here, you notice that everything comes from this. Whatever your view of the world is how you will perceive it. And as you observe this moment unfold, you start to notice the natural pace of everything. And when the mind becomes spacious, it feels like the world is coming to you. It is part of the recognition that everything is already here. And what you're looking for is not external. What comes next is just an idea. And what was before is just a memory, all happening now. It doesn't mean that you cannot relate, talk to people about time, but to recognize that all those things are ideas. And as soon as these ideas in time take the shape of what you feel you have the right to experience, or what must happen, that is identification. That is how we suffer our experience. All suffering comes from mistaken identity. To believe that you are something that you are not. But you cannot think yourself out of it. You cannot go in the opposite direction. You cannot push things away, because that is still from the idea of identity. Go about your life, do your duties, do what is needed, but always come back to this. You don't have to talk about it, you don't have to preach it, you don't have to tell everyone how great meditation is. You just do your sadhana. And as you every day in your life come back to this sadhana, you break the old patterns of the egoic mind. And at first it will seem like effort, but with time you will just come back. You will just remember. You can slowly open your eyes, move your body. Practicing meditation is not taking on an identity as a certain kind of individual in society. Actually, it can be a big hindrance if you take that identity seriously. The best is to look at what happens naturally. What are the expressions of this body? And not to push away if you have longings or something because you think it's more spiritual not to have them. The natural expression of things is helpful. Not being stuck on an idea of being spiritual and how that looks, because that is always false. If we put it in other terms, the absurdity reveals itself if you would say, I am taking the shape of God. It sounds crazy and grand. And that is what many meditators do when they think of a personality that is in alignment with God. Just see what is here. If there is an expression that's on the surface and something just needs to come out, it will reveal itself. Always look and see if your mind gets quiet, if there is permanent change. If your sadhana makes you calm for the moment, and the moment you stop, it feels like you slowly go back to what you were. It is not an effective sadhana. It can has its place just to show you that it does not work. And we're so used to with things going very fast. And your practice, and it can develop quite quickly if you're sincere, but for many people you get stuck on things. You believe things. You believe things about your identity, of who you are in this world, what rights you have, what obligations you have, the whole idea of psychological makeup, what you have to fix to be happy, blah, blah, blah. This makes the road long for many. But I don't want to say that the road is long, because that is also not true. The mind always wants to grab things, hold them, so that you're safe. Meditation is not that. It is the paradox of stability in uncertainty, of building a home in nothing. Papaji called it to live in an empty house. And when someone tries to steal something from you, it's not possible. Because there is nothing. Nothing to trigger. Nothing to take away from you, making you less. No treasures to elevate you, to make you better. Nothing. We underestimate the power of nothing. The more space, the more precious the moment becomes. It's so easy to see beingness in everyone. It's so strange that fulfillment shows us that you cannot be fulfilled. The ideas you have that will fulfill you will turn to nothing. You might believe it for a while. You've achieved some dream and you're happy about your dream. But there's also something in you, especially if you recognize beingness itself, that says there is no change. On the surface there seems to be change, but there is no change. But the paradox there is that if you believe that it will fulfill you, you have to try. Otherwise you have to play the game of hope and hopelessness. And people get stuck in that. Some people don't like to try to go for things that they dream of. Maybe some of you have this. You don't dare to go for them because something intuitive in you knows that it will show that it is nothing. So it's nicer to have the hope of the dream on a distance. And if things align in a way that it feels like you cannot achieve your dream anymore, you can go into the other part of ego, which is hopelessness, bitterness, failure, the idea of not being enough. None of these things are true. That should be a great relief to everyone. Otherwise it would be a very harsh world where people, if they seized their opportunity in the right time, had a chance of happiness, otherwise no. And the expression of non-duality reveals this. But you have to come back to something that reminds you of it. If it is in you, come back to your sadhana. If you need support, come to satsang. It's not super important at first to sit for long periods of time in silence, especially if you're restless and cannot do it. It can just feel like torture or terror if you do. But you can always come and recognize whatever you do, doing your dishes, doing your laundry, dancing, painting, just recognize this moment. Notice that it's just unfolding. And this quality will be apparent to you. It is much more subtle than feelings and thoughts. The recognition of it is much more subtle in its nature, but it's also very, very profound. And just in whatever you do, come back to it. Just recognize that you can notice the experience. It's such a simple instruction. And I know in the moment where you feel a bit anxious, worried, or it's a bit too much, or you feel stressed, that it feels impossible almost. But if the thoughts come, just try it also when you're really identified with your thoughts. Just see that you can watch it. Take a couple of seconds, close your eyes, and just recognize. And when you get used to it, it takes you out of it quickly. This strong identification that can happen is always, it's like a trance that gets in front of your, in front of the experience. And it colors everything. And since it's so easy to be blind to what is going on, it is good to come back to recognizing it. And if you're not used to it, you might experience that, oh, I'm quite anxious, or I'm quite stressed, or whatever it is. Just realizing your state. And in that, it can begin to calm down. And it's just that this trance of the ego have become very hardened and very strong over the years. So, in your sadhana, in your practice, you just recognize that you are not that. That the moment always is. And the more you feel comfortable here, the more you can invite the experience. And I say invite because the common way of experiencing is to resist. Do you understand what I mean by that? To push all kinds of experiences away that you don't like. You might not think that you resist it. For example, pain in your body. It has two components. It has the experience of the physical sensations of tension and pressure and all that you can feel the pain. But the component that make you really suffer it is the identified component, the resistance to pain. And those things are very, very different in quality. I remember early on when I was meditating, I was doing a Vipassana meditation retreat, and my knees, they hurt so much. You say 10 hours a day and your knees are just terrible. There's so much pain in your knees. And I just continued sitting and sitting. And at some point, I was with the pain in the knees, and it just for a moment started to... I stopped the resistance to it. I stopped resisting the pain. I just allowed it to happen. And it, for a moment, just could be pressure, tension. It felt exactly the same, but without the suffering. And I think for most people, those things are just the same. We cannot discern between them. So we often think that the thought or the emotion itself or whatever the expression or a person is the source of that pain, of that identified pain. But that happens when you believe that it is connected to you and that it is your expression. And the beauty of that is, of course, that there is a possibility of freedom. And if the identified idea falls a couple of times, you start to doubt it. This is a very, very beautiful doubt. Precious doubt. You stop believing that the painting that is your experience is a perfect picture. You start to see that it has cracks and that the light comes in through those cracks. And as soon as you start to see that, your inquiry and your meditation will be easier. Because everything that you believe in your experience, for it to feel solid, it has to, there has to be a strong sense of belief to it. It has to feel real. And it's so easy to believe that since experience work as it does, phenomena work as they do, that it seems to be an objective world that you're looking at. But it's much more like you're a projector. I think that many people see themselves as the receiver of the experience. You understand what I mean by that? That they see themselves as separate from the world and see themselves like they're receiving the world. But it's much more like you are the world. And it is perceived as you identify. And that is why it makes sense to do your practice like sadhana and not shuffle the world around to your liking. And if you observe the external world and people who believe that shuffling around other people, pushing them around and adjusting things to create peace and stability, I think you quite quickly see where that leads. And everyone think that their idea of how the world should be is the sane way. And thousands of these sane ways collide and create so much violence and so much death and so much suffering. The world is not external. It is here. And the more comfortable you are with your experience, the more comfortable you will be with the world. If you are comfortable with just a single emotion or a single fear, and you encounter that in someone else and don't react, you can change their life completely. Because they will have opened the door to that there can be non-fear. It sounds like such a small thing. But most people have carried the same fears. They just copy the fears of their parents, and your parents have copied those fears of their parents, and those grandparents have copied the fears of their parents, and it just continues. And when you stop that, you might stop a long lineage of the same fear and the same behavior. They don't raise statues over people who have overcome their fears. But maybe they should, instead of people just winning wars. But you won't be interesting in a headline kind of way. You won't be interested in creating big dramas, controversies. Because the more peaceful you are, you will find those things uninteresting. Is there any questions today? Take the mic.
So when you talked about pain and tensions and so on in the body, you also talked about an invitation to invite all of that. Could you maybe elaborate on that?
Yes.
What that invitation might look like?
Yes. And the invitation that I talk about is, it requires some stability in with beingness. There has to be a sense that something is stable in you. that you can invite things into. And it's usually a bit scary because those are things that there are tendencies to push away. You can see a certain kind of shame or some kind of emotion that you don't like, and every time it comes, you have some nice movement to just keep it on arm's length. And it can feel so big to invite it. So there has to be some stability in that. But if you sit regularly, you will come to a point where you sit, you feel it feels quiet, it feels good, and these kind of things come. Especially those that you push away. They feel like they come in the periphery, and when you invite them in and really allow them to be felt, you will see that they are nothing. They will just, because that is the natural expression of things. But we also grow dependent on the pain. Sometimes we also like the story of the pain connected to an emotion. So we like to keep it on arm's length. Because we like the idea that we are a victim of something. And maybe you have told the story to many people of this, or it's ingrained in your person that this fear is there. So it feels scary to go beyond that, because then you start to feel like you are nothing. So that's usually the resistance to it. But when you start to see it clearly, and maybe you have to have awareness of all those patterns and all the effects of it. And sometimes you will see all of those things in one moment. It is like you just have a moment of clarity around this emotion. You just see the whole thing. You see the consequences of it. You see everything, and you can just invite it in.
So just as a follow-up question, so what is quite common for me is that there are certain emotions, pain in the body and so on, and they come up and they can get quite strong. And at that moment, I say to myself, I invite it all. But there is a sort of, I invite you so that I could get rid of you.
Yes.
I can sense that. So the invitation is always conditional.
Yes.
And that's a challenge, I see.
Yes. So the words itself can actually enhance the resistance in this scenario that you're talking about. But the invitation should be much more like just a silent. Just allowing it in. Because the mind can have all kinds of tricks. And it can especially be very, yes, I only want to invite this in on the premise that you promise that I get rid of you. It feels like that. We have agreement, right? And then I can allow you to come close. And since there is so much identification in that process, that is so much with the idea that I am a someone that needs healing, and you just put on all these layers of identity on it, it cannot really merge, because it merges into the nothingness that you are, the awareness that you are. And as soon as you build this shield of identity, it has to, then you will relate with that. Then you invite it into that. That's why I say there has to be some stability in this space, in this spaciousness. And you don't have to understand that space. It's not like a feature. It's not like a part of you, like a thing. It just is. So it will feel when you're comfortable with the space, it's not like now I am this space and I can invite it into that space. It's just spaciousness, and spaciousness embraces. There's nothing personal in that. And the subtle sensations of it is just like fears can come up of what will happen through it. But if you can observe all that, you will see that none of it is real.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to continue on the same topic a little
Okay.
bit,
Yes.
but more from the experience that the body is also extremely intelligent. That it's actually kind of communicating when something is not being allowed fully, or like when something feels forced.
Mm.
At least I've experienced this. That's also when the pain shows itself, so that it actually becomes more and more difficult to force things.
Mm. There is absolutely an expression that is like that, a very natural expression of also the longing for beingness and the longing for freedom itself. It is in us, but usually it's overridden by ideas. And also, the ego is very quick to hijack those kind of things. It can come from a very pure place and say, this has to be dealt with. And the ego says, yes, in this way. And it starts again with what Anders also was touching on, the conditions of it is suddenly with the ego. It cannot just be allowed. And this makes those impulses very complicated when people ask, does this come from the ego or does it come from beingness? Yes, the impulse is very free at first, and then the mind does something with it. Very common. Because the mind always wants to have like a strategy or a way and a feeling of doership with it. But actually the invitation of just allowing the moment or an expression in the moment to be as they are is not really a strategy. It is just a acceptance. Is that what you were thinking? Or what you were referring to?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. For me, it's more the other way around. I think that it's, but I don't really know how to put it into words. But more that that the mind can be really strong, of course, in doing things or how you should do things, but once that recognition of freedom comes, then it becomes more and more difficult to 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 follow that,
Yes.
to
Yes.
not be with the beingness, because it's
Yes.
like permeating everything. So yeah, it's almost like there's a invisible hand, like
Yes. And
helping.
yes, and when you go against that, it feels almost painful.
Yes.
Yes. Um, that is also, especially when you start to go with beingness, um, and there is a deep allowance of it. Certain actions of the ego can feel very, very stiff and very pain. They can feel directly painful, and it is very nice guidance that happens in that. It's very easy to stay with beingness, even if it's challenging sometimes, because if going with the ego is so painful, it's so easy to choose not to go with it. So that is also it is like the expression of the ego becomes very much like a rigidness. It wants to keep you on a certain track, like keep you in line. And the more there is spaciousness, the more painful that becomes. That is all the time try to correlate to that. Because the natural beingness is very free. It's very free. It has it's even beyond being rational. In a very, very beautiful way. That sounds a bit crazy, but it's beyond rational thought in that sense, that beingness can just guide you in a sense that, and if you trust it, it's very, very beautiful where it can take you, and it can be very, very have quite much force with it, but you just have to trust a lot, because it can seem very strange, and also if you had a relationship to your thoughts earlier that you were very spontaneous and very impulsive, you might have a very negative feeling of that kind of movement. But the pure movement of beingness, when it has no agenda and no it's not playing a game of I give you this, if you give me that. It's not doing any of that. It's just, this is the direction. And you can follow or you can resist it. And if you resist, there is a natural sense that it somehow feels very forced. It feels like you really...
And there's no trace also. Like when you do things from the mind, there's always a trace from the doing.
Yes. What we refer to as karma.
Yeah.
That's something that feels like something continues. And in this very natural movement of things, there is no karma. That's also very obvious. There's nothing that continues in that. It's just done in the moment and then finished. Thank you. Meditation just gets easier and easier. The more you practice it, the more you're with this moment as it is, the more you recognize the nature of things, the easier it is. In the beginning, the most difficult. And usually you have to come to a place where it feels like you have no choice. This is a very beautiful crossroad. The no choice one. And people might say that they had a hard life, or a lot of things happened to them, or this or that. But if they come to the place of examining this, it is the hand of God. It's very beautiful. Something is really with you to push you forward into it. And if your identification and the mind is very chaotic, and you have a lot of emotions with it, and it's always a lot of drama, it's very, very difficult to see the subtle nature of beingness. Those things have to calm down, and you have to have a priority of being interested in finding that silence. And it's so easy to be addicted to emotions, to your fears, to ideology, to whatever it is that you think makes your life purposeful. And if you're stuck with those things, it can be very, very difficult to find any kind of peace. And it can be very challenging to just sit with yourself, to just recognize this moment. It can be very, very difficult with that, because it's so chaotic. But the more you practice, the deeper the peace gets. And you come to a point where every time you recognize, you come back to this. Every time you sit, you come back to it. And if the ego doesn't hijack you in saying, you've done it, it's perfect now, don't disturb this by going deeper in inquiry or something ridiculous like that. That's what the mind says. And you continue. The bliss and the beauty of this moment it goes so deep, so deep. You will start to have thoughts like you feel fine with the idea of the death of the body, all these things. The moment gets so precious, every meeting gets so precious. You understand that nothing is for granted, nothing lasts, everything is in this constant movement and this flux. And it becomes easy to say to the people around you that you appreciate them, that you love them, all these things. And you start to become like those old people who don't care anymore and just say whatever comes to their mind. I love that. It's so beautiful, I think. And you won't mind if people judge you or think that you're strange or crazy. It's fine. And you also don't feel like you have to be understood by everyone. And people might say things about your choices in life and say that they admire your courage or blah, blah, blah. But you don't feel courageous. You just feel like you do whatever happens in the moment. It's just an expression of everything. Thoughts happen. actions happen. It's not a life of considering everything. Because everything will happen as it happens, and the things that do not happen, and the things that happen, do happen. Meditation is the simplest difficult thing there is. It is so obvious. Everyone touches it at some point. If you can understand that you are, then you're touching it on some level. Even though you think that you are a body or a cluster of thoughts or a personality or whatever you assume yourself to be. The original thing that goes back to the sense of I is awareness itself. It's just that you have to question, what is reality? What am I? What is the experience? What is the world? What is my life? Those questions are very good to ask. Not so that you find some deep intellectual answer that you can pull out when people ask you. Oh, the meaning of life. I have thought about that a lot. Da, 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 da. Not like that. Really look. Really make it into your experience. And if you have a theory about it, or you hear about something in meditation, practice it and see if it is true. This is a very good way of checking things. And see if it makes if you do any kind of sadhana, see if it makes your mind quiet. And see if it has any permanent change. And you have to have some patience. I'm sorry, but you have to have some patience. When people come back to me and say, yeah, I tried this self-inquiry thing, but it doesn't really work. And I say, how long did you try? Yeah, I tried a couple of times over 2 weeks. I'm like, okay. Our attention spans are so short. No one has time for sadhana, trying something for 6 months or a year or 2 years. No one wants to do it. It's too much. Maybe I can do it later when I retire. Maybe I can do it blah, blah, blah. But this is your life. This experience is the thing. And if you just suffer through every day or so much, you feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed, you feel so much psychological pressure all the time, there is no playfulness, there is no spaciousness, then what is life? What makes life have that quality that makes it precious, that makes every meeting precious, that makes every person precious, that makes everything precious? See what creates that quality. And when the mind gets quiet and peace just comes for no reason, happiness comes for no reason, you sit and laugh on your pillow and nothing has happened. There is nothing that is funny that came from the outside. It's just the freedom of being. The first time I met my guru, I came into his little room. There were two old Indian men. There was a young woman with her two small children, and there was a Western woman who was translating for Swami. We talked a little bit, and then we just laughed and laughed and laughed. For no reason. There were no jokes, there were no stand-up, there was no... I just so clearly recognized spaciousness in him, that deep, deep peace, that the only reaction I had to that was laughing. And Swami knew, of course, so he also just laughed with me for a long time. Because the peace in us does not have a reason. And the mind makes it so that, oh, I just have to go on this, I'm on this journey, doing these things. I just have to come to this point, and now I feel more like I'm ready for this. And it has all these, it makes a path where there actually is none. And you love the path because you can tell people about your path. You can compare paths. You can talk about all kind of things around it. But in depth, you have to ask yourself, where am I going? What is this seeking leading to? And you might call yourself very proudly, oh, I'm a spiritual seeker. Yes, but what are you seeking? Where are you going? And the ridiculous discovery would be that you're already the thing that you're looking for. That there was never anything missing. That it was not an Excel sheet that you could tick off like thing after thing, fear after fear, vasana after vasana. Oh, yeah, now I've gone through vasana number 13. Very good. I'm on my way. And if that were true, why is it that some people, when they're the most depressed and the most helpless, they suddenly lose their ego for a while? It just... poof. These stories are much more common than most people think. And sometimes it's just because they give up. They stop resisting. And we don't look at our internal world as symbolic. We don't look at when we're a teenager and feel suicidal, we don't understand that that is symbolic. We think that I have to have help because I have suicidal thoughts. But it's just a symbol of that the ego gets unbearable. And then when the identity is forming like that, it hurts. It is painful. It is not nice. And you feel like, I don't want this. I want to die. That is not a strange thing to feel. But most people are so afraid of that idea, that thought, so they cannot handle it. They panic. To be tired of that is just to be tired of the status quo of things. Be tired of an ego that is very rigid and stiff. That is normal. That is not a strange thing. It's not a crazy thing. They don't need to be locked up. Everyone deeply wants to be free from suffering, of course. And you can, of course, hold your emotions at bay all the time and make intricate stories about why everything is like it is and try to keep a good facade for the people around you and be a good sport. But that is a terrible life. At least from my perspective, that is not a good life. I've seen it so much. When I was growing up, I saw so many adults that were successful and unhappy. They projected an image that they were amazing. But you knew the children and they said, "My father drinks every evening." So you understood that, but he always projected that I am successful and everything is great. And you have to be real with things. And the things that you deal with is not always nice or easy even. But the honesty is so helpful. And sometimes it's difficult to realize what's going on. And then it's good to come and ask questions and have a spiritual sangha where you can talk about things very openly and very freely. Because otherwise you live a life of pretend, and that is not living. And we live now in a time where everyone thinks that they have to be famous or successful in a very specific manner to achieve some kind of happiness. It's a brutal image to project on all the young people. Because you can live a very, very simple life and be very, very happy. But almost no one knows. There have to be fireworks and everyone has to know your name or whatever. And the sadhana is simple. It is the acceptance of what is. You can call it that, you can call it be as you are. You can investigate what creates the expression that we call love. The unconditional version. The big love. What makes that come as an expression? You can ask your question however you like, but the answer is the same. You are beingness itself. And the expression of that beingness is love. And every spiritual path or every inquiry into life will eventually take you to that thing, because we are not different in that sense. We're all the same, so it has always to lead to the same thing, to the same source. They might proclaim, when they look at the religions and the historians and the authors, say there are many gods. That is not true. There's many expressions of the same beingness. And all the paths lead to that. Even the paths that say that there is no God. Interestingly enough. And it's just a definition of what we mean by God. If we by God means beingness itself, awareness, the I. Then all is that.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's so many that has been sitting the way we are sitting. So is there a day when we all will be free? Or is this like, you know?
Do you feel like the progress is going slowly for spirituality in general?
No, but it just feels like it doesn't matter or something, you know, like a bit like, not that it doesn't matter, but in some way it feels like it's the only thing that matters, but at the same time that it really doesn't matter.
I think that what we talked about before, your question before this, that you can feel a rigidness I think that everyone who has opened this gate to spirituality and don't follow it always feel a little bit of that resistance. They have to fight it a little bit. And it can feel, I've met many people that feel very, very relieved the day. They can have been fighting it for 20 years because of their ideas of that is religion or that is ideas of something. And then they go into it and they feel such a relief because it's so natural to them. So I think if that is the expression in you, it will feel like that. It is in a way not a choice, because you ask the question from the standpoint like, is there any point to it? Can I turn away from spirituality or like?
No, not that not that this person needs to turn away from anything, but it's more like. Yeah, that it's been so many, you know, it's been so many that's been sitting like we do. And it's gonna be so many, probably, you know?
Yes.
So then it just feels like, yeah, like a mystery, you know? That we're here, sitting here.
Yes,
so,
and
like,
but
doing all of this, you know?
yes. That is the expression that is happening. And I understand everyone who also feels like, but more people have to realize and this. But then again, it becomes so much from the idea of transforming the external, and you make yourself into something, and the whole idea of I am someone who knows better and therefore I have the right, and suddenly you're in the same kind of movement and the dual energy that almost the whole of the world is in. We need more of just know yourself and be as that. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be like a spiritual activist. You can just be as you are. And that thing in itself changes people around you. That is automatic. You might not notice it sometimes because for you it's just life. But people around you will say things like, they can say that they love to see you interact with other people. That's such a strange thing to say to someone. But they just enjoy it because they see the flow of things and the acceptance of things and the naturalness of it. And that they see people that they have talked to 100 times in a different light. And suddenly it opens the little door in their head to what is possible. That is the freedom that you are, not in your ideas of what you can give to others or that it should be in a certain sense. And I know that also some people feel like, yes, but it's so selfish to sit like that. You're not partaking in the world. But everyone interacts in the world. And if you're peaceful and you're in connection with your beingness, that will be the expression that you give. And as soon as there are people pushing too hard for spirituality or mysticism to be really, then there always becomes a lot of resistance because so many people are not ready. Someone asked Swami, but you want my guru, but you want as many people to come as possible. And he said, no, absolutely not. I want the people to come who are ready.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, that it's a continuous play. It's not like, like in 100 years we'll all reach enlightenment or something.
You never know how the world is changing a lot in our time, and people come under different pressure, and it can push people in different directions. But most likely, if we see to history, there will be some mystics that are interested in these things, and most people will not be. They find it too cumbersome or too difficult or whatever idea there is. But during the time that I have had an interest in meditation, it has changed a lot. When I started practicing 26 years ago, people that heard that I was interested in meditation had no idea what it was. Some people said he has gone into Hare Krishna, or they didn't know anything about it. Today, through the science and mindfulness movement, so many people just have the feeling that meditation is something positive, which was not my experience when I first started with meditation. And that is a big shift, but they still don't practice. But people in general have a much more positive image, is my sense. But I think that because the nature of it, if your mind is filled with ideas, it is very difficult to practice. So if you also have a lot of at stake mentally, it is a chance that you find it too cumbersome. And that is fine. Until the day you have a crisis, or you get cancer, or your parents die, or whatever, then it can change again. Because then you have to look again. But most people just want to feel okay. And not suffer too much. Make their life comfortable. Okay. I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, it doesn't matter.
okay, good, very good. Let's sing something. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come for me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away Without seeing thee, my love, will my days fly away. Without seeing thee, my love, night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. May all beings find peace, the peace of the unmoving awareness that is here always. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.